Hello. Normally I read fiction, but I thought no more comfort zone, so I'd indulge in my other passion, which is writing serious historical essays. This is a serious historical essay, and it's all true. It's called Known Dictatorships. Throughout history, many men have risen to power, abused their position, and used it to exact control over vast portions of the population. Some of those individuals, Hitler, Stalin, Kim Jong-il, will forever be remembered in the annals of history, although some will inevitably fall by the wayside and simply be buried. Perhaps their attempt to grab power was not as successful as they had hoped. Perhaps they didn't have what it takes. Whatever the reason, we at the Institute for Lesser Known Dictators have committed ourselves to bringing back to the public's attention the stories of the forgotten tyrants. Today, we look at what must rank as one of the most frightening dictatorships in British political history. In 1993, the British Isles were going through a renaissance of sorts. The trade union Unison was born. Peace talks with Northern Ireland began in earnest, and 3 members of future pop band One Direction were expelled from the womb. Their birth, witnessed by several future D-list celebrities, sent back in time to prevent the birth of the almighty Second Direction. Elsewhere, though, extremist politics were rearing their ugly head. A new kind of political party rose from the ashes of that year, born on the back of the public's criticism of John Major and a lack of confidence in the other parties. Some turned to the BNP, who gained their first seat in Tower Hamlets that very year, but most turned to another party, led by an incredibly charismatic man. This party was simply known as the House Party, and their signature anthem was sung far and wide, becoming a Christmas #1, and announcing a terrifying future for Britain. Their leader and icon, an enormous spotted monster, talked in psychopathic gibberish and rallied communities behind him through a combination of abuse, torture, and slapstick comedy. The man was simply known as Mr. Blobby. The song was perhaps the most important tool in the party and subsequent regime. So, perhaps the best way to analyse the period would be to dissect a selection of the complex lyrics and discuss how they contributed to the lesser known. I spent 5 minutes staring in the mirror and saying blobby because it's the funniest word. How they contributed to the lesser known blobby regime of Great Britain. The opening line of the song is as follows. 10 seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, ignition, liftoff. The space programme was a notorious failure of Mr. Blobby's term in office. It's just the word Blobby. A reference to it, placed at the beginning of the House Party anthem, appears to make it clear that space travel was at the forefront of the Blobby regime. However, the rocket, built by Noel Edmonds, with assistance from a special guest that week, Twiggy, exploded upon launch, killing all 5 astronauts. The Blobby Party subsequently rescinded from the space race. We move on then to the bulk of the first verse, which many of you may remember from your morning Blobby worship sessions at school. These lyrics. Blobby, oh Mr. Blobby, your influence will spread throughout the land. His philosophy of life will steer him through, and as far as he can see, he's the same as you and me. There's nothing in the world he cannot do, no hill too high, no desert too dry, no road too long, no tide too strong, no bridge too far. He's got a car! No slope too steep, no thought too deep, no star too bright, no squeeze too tight. Teachers at the time would tell stories of starting lessons late to fit in with the requisite worship time. They would describe children no more than 5 years old, singing the lyrics in the playground, saluting the Blobby portraits that hung on the wall of every classroom, dotting their faces with red and pink spots to show allegiance to the party. One teacher, Mr. Twainthwaite from Lancashire, removed the Blobby portrait one morning, telling students they didn't need to conduct worship that day. A young boy, only 6 years old, reported him to the authorities. Mr. Twainthwaite was sent straight to the North Pole to act as a runner on the latest series of Noel's Christmas presents. Now we skip towards the end of the song. Mr. Blobby and the house party took power in a tricky time. Whilst the initial months of his term were marked by Blobby marches, high-minded rhetoric and a general sense of determination from loyal subjects, there soon rose a resistance to the regime. Made up of students, war veterans and a collective of presenters from ITV, the resistance bombed government buildings and organised mass protests. The streets devolved into martial law, and historians now believe that perhaps all of this was orchestrated by the regime themselves. The clues hidden in that fateful song. Blobby, oh Mr. Blobby, when disaster strikes you never get depressed. Blobby, oh Mr. Blobby, you'll always prove that Blobby is the best. Blobby, oh Mr. Blobby, if humanity is a question of degree, Blobby, Mr. Blobby, stay loyal to your Blobby pedigree. Blobby, oh Mr. Blobby, you're the one who bears the pink and yellow crest. Blobby, Mr. Blobby, you'll always prove that Blobby is the best. And in the end, it's those final lines which ring most true. The pink and yellow crest for many of us is a reminder of those times, a badge worn by the inner house party, but blazoned on the walls of every building, on the posters reading "Blobby is watching you," and on school children's Blobby-approved textbooks. So where did Mr. Blobby go? And what happened to the house party? History has not been kind to us, and many of the documents have gone missing, or been burned during the infamous SNTV Live putsch the following year. When Downing Street was stormed by protesters and the building taken over, Blobby was nowhere to be found. The party disbanded, and although it still exists in some form, they wield no power, and you can't even get it on DVD. Blobby, on the other hand, is rumoured to escape the country and claimed asylum somewhere in the Middle East. He is currently on the most wanted list in England, and the anthem, the Blobby song, is still banned in England to this day.